to hear it again. Mm-hmm.
Totally, totally. A little reminder or so yes. So here it is. Let me just move things around and keep.
Her name is Beat. That's how she pronounces it.
Beate.
Beate.
Beate, right? She's German.
Yeah, she's German.
She's
I was
from Germany. She's from the world, but she landed in Germany.
You're actually calling from Germany? You're in Germany right now?
No. I'm in Cambridge, Mass.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Sandy is here in Austin, and she's also sometimes in Mexico. Yeah.
I live in Mexico City too. So.
Yeah.
But right now I can't even get back to Mexico City right now.
No.
Yeah.
Nor do I really want to, not with the conditions right there.
No, not right now. Huh?
Mm-hmm. No, I think I'm not even sure where in the States. I think we're fine so far here in Austin. We're still on sort of a lower curve. But Mexico City, we don't even know. We don't even have the information.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Well, sometimes the unknown.
And it's Easter, and they like to celebrate Easter. You know, I don't know what's going to happen there.
Yeah. Okay, so this webinar is to share a little bit, because I had a few more than a few people inquiring about this. Here's Nicole. Nicole, who all of you know Nicole now. And so when so Nicole, you can show up if you want to be on the little tile. But if you want to stay hidden, you can too. I'm recording the video, so I will share it with everyone. So yes, this webinar was sparked because I had received a few inquiries, of more than a few, about intuitive skill, Nicole, and like what is an empath. And I do feel that there is a resurgence right now of people feeling that the accepted understanding about life and knowledge that we have about it is just no longer offering us enough resolution to find guidance, and that we intuitively know that there's something deeper within ourselves and greater than ourselves that has more, that owns and holds more information, so to speak. And the challenge is to how to access to this space that exists and is available, but we have to detach ourselves from a certain aspect of us in order to access it. So and it has become important for me to share the path for people to get empowered with being able to do it themselves, instead of systematically relying on somebody else to clear, to share that with them. Hence, for all of you know the Cosmic Compass. The Cosmic Compass is one of these tools that is a translation. It facilitates the translation for these information coming from that exist already, but they are just not computing with our consciousness at that time. And the game becomes a medium that allows our conscious mind and our deeper self to connect. So, of course, this is great to use the tool, but we have to get to a point where eventually the tool is no longer needed. And we can, just by being tuning into these lighter bodies of us, this higher version of us, we can just have access to this information as just like we have access to information because we are reading a book, or we are listening to somebody, or we are engaged and committing into learning a specific activity. So, and for that, we need to give up the power within ourselves to a different aspect of us. So what we wish, in order to access to that lighter body, is to first finding out, like, what is it that, what am I talking about when I talk about an empath? What is it? Am I an empath? Like, why am I not an empath every day? Why is it like that I cannot be feeling that I am an empath? Why can I not claim this noun, this status as I am an empath. We feel it, and we feel it very often as I'm an empath, and so I feel too much, and so I have to isolate myself. So very often the way I hear the people's connection to their empath self is, it's not necessarily negative, but it tends to actually create a sense of isolation, differences, a sense of alienation, or instead of actually a true sense of connection, which is supposed to be to start with, right? So to me, the first question, and of course, this 1 hour webinar is not going to offer a full range of, like at the end, like, I know how to do it, but you will get more tangibility around the concept of what an empath is, and eventually finding out more ways and guidance to let it come and own it and give it the power. So what is an empath? According to me, it's most likely, if you go on Google and you go or share with other people, they're going to have their own version of what an empath is. But for me, an empath is a being capable of aligning with his or her lighter body and aligning with his energy, the same energy, to another. So I'm repeating this. An empath for me is someone who has consciously reconnected his conscious mind, his awareness, to the lighter version of the body and create a natural alignment with it. It's almost like somebody on that would want to get a hold of you and doesn't have your phone number. As soon as you get the phone number to that person can get a hold of you, call, just had a conversation. Right now, being an empath to me is having been given the phone number to that higher version of yourself and always being in alignment, in connection with it, right? What's interesting to see is that if you were to you wanted to connect with somebody else in the world, you would have to give your phone number to that person. Therefore, you know how to access to this, which means that it's more the action of reconnecting with our empath self is much more a surrender experience than a things I have to do to become an empath. Does it make sense? Right? It is really more about allowing ourselves to remember that that's who we truly are, over having to create a strategy to build it, to make it happen, right? So this is also the other part of it, is that there's no one that is an empath and somebody else that is not an empath. We all are empath. Why? Because an empath is an energy being embodied in a physical experience, which is all that we are. Every single one of us is an energy being embodied in a physical experience. An empath has the capacity to connect, to have the physical body, the conscious mind, connecting to his lighter energy form. When we are in the energy form, we can connect with every other energy form, which is who we are. So it is something that exists and that we must accept as the truth. We are no longer a physical body being separated. We are, which means that we need a phone to call each other with a phone number. We are energy being, already connected, already speaking to one another in a language that is more subtle than the language of French and English and Spanish and all of this. If you have any question along the way, please feel free to stop me, ask me, so, especially because we are only 4 right now, so that kind of help the flow. If you have some question, individual question, don't hesitate. All of that makes sense so far? Mm-hmm. Yeah? Okay, so one question that was always asked, that is very often asked to me is, why can't I do it? Well, what can I do it? What can't, what is it that makes me not being able to hear my soul or be clear about my higher self, or getting the download, or feeling the guidance of my inner self? So I made a list of 7 points, and then maybe probably more, but those are very often the more predominant that seems to always get in the way. Because again, remember that this is already existing. We don't have to create the channel between our conscious mind and our higher self. It exists. Therefore, it is always something we put in between that separates us from recognizing this language. One is a limited mindset. I can't do it. I'm not special. Or I believe so much that I am in a physical body that this is not possible. Or I'm scared of it. Like all of these limited belief that creates a limited mindset that separates us from the greater expanded sense of self. That makes sense? The second one is what I call the karmic sabotaging, which creates a shut door between the conscious mind and the higher self. And these are, this is a pattern, a cycle that we have brought from beyond being born, previous lifetimes, that we are bringing because we had to shut it down for the reason that we got killed in previous lifetime because of our ability to connect. So in order to protect ourselves, the conscious experience here will come with a already disconnection to that aspect. Is it possible to reconnect? Absolutely. But at the moment, it may be very well that it's not consciously like, it's not like I'm limited in my belief system. It's not that I don't want to believe. It's not like, it is because karmically we have to go back in previous lifetime to retrieve the story that created the shut door. And there's ways to do this, okay? The third one is which is going back to the limited mindset, but it has a little a deeper aspect in it. It's what I call the limited understanding of the nature of life itself. So we have limited mindset, you know, when we bring it up to us, like, oh, I can't do this. I'm not special. I'm not good enough. You know, low self-esteem. But there's also the other aspect of limiting understanding, which is about the cosmology of the universe. Like, how does it work in the greater picture? What is the purpose of life itself? What is this intuition for? What's the purpose? Where is it connected to? So not understanding the place, like our own place in the cosmology and our own place in the greater picture, is very often detaching us, is not giving us the possibility to connect with that higher self, because we don't understand how we're connecting, what's the relativity, the relationship in between with it, right? There's another one which you may have experienced, I know that I had experienced it earlier on, is the expectation of a certain outcome. It is okay, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to meditate, and I'm going to see my soul coming down. She's going to be beautiful and pink. And then it's a face with a dark eye. And so suddenly we're like, oh, it's not working, we don't even see it because we are so locked into I'm expecting to see this, that we are missing how the insights or the language actually come through. So this very often is the conscious mind, when in a situation of wanting to connect with one's intuitive skill, will tend to go on a hunt, going outward to pick up some elements, some information, some knowledge that you know it's after. And really the practice of intuitive ability is it's the opposite. It is something that we need to invite to come by opening to the widest without any expectation. right? Because again, when we have an expectation, it's almost like we are taking the laser focus ray and just make it like, that's what I'm expecting. So we are missing literally everything that is around and above and below, right? So the practice of full openness is necessary when we are in the experience of connecting with our highest truth, right? Of course, another one is the lack of heart opening, which is connected to the sense of openness. Very often, and it's just by design, we can't, the language of the soul, the language of the higher self is not moving through a linearity of the mind. It short circuits the mind by going through the heart. So a shut heart will obviously, it's almost like being deaf. It's not giving an opportunity for the soul to have a voice, because the way she would be heard is by using the heart as a gate to connect. So the heart that is not open due to, again, it can be karmic pattern trauma, early trauma, it can be belief system, all of these that usually the heart shutting is due to emotional trauma in the early age, where we felt pain, we were unable to explain, and what we understood is it's not safe, so we're shutting it off, right? And then now this closing of the door is offering us a lack of connection to higher spheres of ourselves, because we only have to deal with the linearity and the horizontality of our life, right, on this plane. Okay. Another aspect which is connected to the lack of heart opening is self-trust. Self-trust is one of the primary reasons, like self-doubt, self-trust is a lack of self-trust is the primary reason for us to not listen. And eventually we could listen, but dismiss. It's more about the experience of dismissing what comes in, because it doesn't make any sense, because we have a limited belief, because I'm going to be seen as crazy, because people are going to judge me, because just name it. Okay. And the last one that I perceive is very often the truth is a lack of practice. Mm-hmm. It takes practice to fine-tune one's intuitive skills, just like practicing a language, right? Any one of us who has learned a second language know how, it's going to come fast if we practice it every day. But if we don't, then, what you don't use, you lose, right? So all of this limited mindset, karmic sabotaging pattern, which create a shut doors, limiting understanding of the nature of life, expectation of certain outcome, lack of heart opening, lack of self-trust, and lack of practice, those are what I've observed as being the primary causes for lack of intuitive skill or capacity for intuitive skills, which obviously are not innately connected to the human being in himself or in herself, because those are mental projection. They are not due to the fact that something is broken. I don't know, you only have half of the brain, or it's just like you have something in your body that is missing. You don't have it's not like there's something missing in the physical body or the intellectual or emotional or spiritual body of the being. It is really just how we are using our intellect and our emotionality that is the primary focus. That makes sense, all of this? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you have any question with this? Maybe you have some example of other reason why one cannot or is challenged with tuning into their intuitive skills. There is an aspect of the that just jumped to me, and it's not something that I've experienced, but I have also learned it for some who, and it's part of this limited mindset. But when we have been raised in uh, a culture where there is a strong connection to the darkness, as you know, the spirit is dangerous. There's messing around with this subtle energy, and this subtle realm is dangerous. It can be opening the gate to demons, and so that is very specific to some culture. People do not want to go out there by the fear of what it could be bringing in. And I put it under the limited understanding of the nature of life as well, because this is not how it works, but this is how some have accepted it, or interpreted it, and that would play a role as well as to why I don't want to go explore out there, right? Stephanie here.
Something like superstition.
Superstition, that's it. Yes, yeah, totally. That would be a totally that, like superstition, belief, linked to more. I don't call it like indigenous culture, but it's more like this idea that there's a dark side and a light side, and then those subtle exploration are like can be leaving the room open to some dark forces. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Well, it seems that everything has a basis in trust of one sort or another.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Really, actually being able to trust and trust to the deepest sense of trust, of really with a certainty that things, to open yourself with a certainty that it's okay, to allow yourself to do that, to open your heart, to open your mind. Because a lot of people actually have an ability to sort of think in an intuitive way, but not necessarily feel.
Right. Right. And that's the other part too, is that the expectation of a certain outcome is when we, I remember when I first got into all of the practice of like intuitive practices, I was convinced that because my friend was very visual, well, I'm just going to start seeing stuff. And then of course it was just not coming this way, because the way my connection to my higher self function and to the universe is just not like the strategy is just not visual, as much visual as it is knowing. And for some it's hearings, for some it's color, for some is the body responding with sudden awareness. For some it is seeing right there, in the projection of the sixth chakra. Some it's through just name it, just like hearing songs, or so again, not expecting anything, and really being widely open with that, really opening our gate, because we know that only the good comes. And so recognizing that what comes is, again, it's not with judgment, it's not with even defining it, it's just what comes in, and then letting it, and just the practice of it is going to start, imagine again that that's a language. If I go to Japan tomorrow and then I open myself to, a group of Japanese in front of me, I'm going to have to be widely open, and then somebody is going to tell me something. And at first, if I try to grasp what that person say with that word, I'm just going to be like, what the heck does it mean? What does it mean? What does it mean? I'm just going to go back home, because that's too much of energy focused on something to give it a meaning. Whereas the experience is more about, I'm hearing this, I'm hearing that, I'm seeing this. Like there's also a holistic aspect of the situation, of the observation that needs to be given, because again, we are so present to all that is, and not expecting one specific outcome, that we are gaining all, like as many information in the moment as our being can process, which give a bigger picture, and we can translate that picture for ourselves.
Or get very confused.
Yes, and the confusion would come because there's a lack of practice of feeling.
Learning.
Right.
Well,
And
but all that's intellectual. You know, when I was actually studying psychology at one point, I remember one of my professors saying empathy is actually cognitive. And I thought, whoa, that's really, and saying it's actually the ability to understand, not to put yourself in someone else's, you know, or to bring that up, but actually to understand where the other person was. So I remember that, and I've questioned it also. And what you're saying right now, I would question it if it really has something to do with the understanding of another.
Yeah, so to me, it's not the understanding. I would not use the word understand. I would use the word, it's to know the frequency at which another vibrate, because it also vibrate with ours. If an experience in the, like let's say that you, Sandy, has an experience, you have an experience that I have experience as well in maybe in other form, but that is connected to that frequency, my being, my energy field will vibrate at a level that connects with the same level as yours. And that will make me know what you are feeling, what you are experiencing at that moment. I would not understand, I would not compute an understanding of where you are, but I would know, because by likeness of energy, I would recognize the frequency, which would take me back into my own memory and would give me a sense of relativity with your experience, if that makes sense. Yeah. So I would just get around, like the understanding to me is highly, again, I connected so much with the brain and with the linearity of like a linear process of deduction to get to, I get it. That definitely I would not, that's not my experience, let's put it that way. It would not be my experience as an empath, but I can understand that somebody would use the word understanding.
Yeah, they would say, and actually they would say, you know, you're actually standing under, which was changing the word around, standing under someone else's reality. But even that, because no, what you're saying is that you're actually aligned with, not, not, you know, you're not putting yourself under someone else's reality. I mean, that sounds philosophical and all that, but anyway, but I because psychology talks about empathy as being more, it's not sympathy, for instance, it's not that kind of emotional. What you're saying, it is really, it's a connection that's and to be able to, for you to feel it, or to, that's where it is.
And that is really, again, it's because to me it's a hardwired quality that we do have as an energy being, like, because this is and that's the challenge, is to detach ourselves from being seen as a physical body, as a mental body, as an intellectual body down here, and actually really knowing ourselves as being a soul. That the soul is the aspect that owns the quality of empath to me. So when we give it to the ego, due to the concept of detachment that strongly defines the ego, it's almost like it's non-existent for it. Empathy, ego cannot be empathy. It cannot be empathetic. It is not an ego quality, but just by the nature of the ego being in a duality existence. Because empathy is the ability to connect with another reality. So it does mean to me, like, it makes sense that it goes back to the only place where we can connect, which is the higher self, right? Okay. So now, how do one fine-tunes with one's intuition? Since we know, all right, we know that what can get in the way. That's maybe, and you may look at this list and it's like, oh, okay, yes, I have to pay attention to this and become aware of this. That's fine. Now, how to fine-tune one's intuition? And I came up again with a few examples. There may be others that I'm inviting you to share with this group so that there's even more. So the first ever is to build self-awareness. Because it's so much of an inner quality, it's an inner language, it's an inner channel. As long as we are going to move out there to and bring the awareness out there, the less we're going to be in tune with that truth, with that channel, with that higher self. So the first ever space is knowing oneself through building self-awareness. Hence the strategy of daily meditation, daily journaling, daily inquiry, daily introspection. All of these practices are building the ability for oneself to know oneself, right? That makes sense? Mm-hmm. Another aspect that I feel is almost like it looks like evidence in some ways when we talk about intuition, but it's very often what gets in the way, is the no second guessing oneself. Right? We have given so much power to the conscious mind that doesn't know better, that when an information comes through directly without its conscious knowledge, we're dismissing it as, oh, I'm just thinking, it's just not important. It's just, I was just thinking about this suddenly. And, oh, I read that yesterday in the journal. And so we are dismissing direct information because we're practicing so much more the linear thinking that process information. So what happens is when we have a direct information coming through, because somehow we are open, we are looking at this information and we're not giving it the power that it requires, because we are dismissing it as non-important, non-essential. So, what I would do is, when I would have a journal dedicated to the practice of self-awareness, and every single time, in every given time, in every given moment, when we have these moments like, oh, I was just thinking about this, I don't know why, I'm going to write it down. Time, day, thought that came through. You may not be able to actually wire right now and connect the dots with why it came through. But once you do that every day or multiple times a day, you're going to start seeing that really there is a consistency of guidance and messages that are being sent, and that are not being sent just in a chaotic way. There is a guidance to it, right? So that would be, and that will help you practice the non-second guessing, accepting what is as it is, not because it makes sense, but because it comes and you are aware of it. The second part of which is connected to that not second guessing is acting on it. And all of you have experienced the Cosmic Compass. The Cosmic Compass to me is an amazing place to practice intuition as well, because when the door is so wide open during the game, by the nature of the game, it offers a space for the soul to be very present. One, because it's a game, so the conscious mind doesn't connect with it as being important, so it just waves away. And the soul has now dominion over the space. By being fully open, things are going to start showering one at a time, just like, and being able to grab what comes, catch it, and then right away share it, or I don't know, open your mind, and then you're like, oh, drinking water. Drinking water means drinking water. I'm going to get up, I'm going to get a glass of water, I'm going to drink water. It's just acting on it. It's like, oh, well, I'm wondering why I'm thinking about drinking water. It's just like, and then we're lingering it, and it's just, and again, we tend to dismiss it instead of actually trusting that this message has come through for our own wellness, our own well-being, from beyond the part of us that supports us, loves us, nurtures us, nourishes us, wants us to, to connect with longevity and well-being at all time, right? So acting on this moment where we feel something, hear something, see something, this is important. Again, to fine-tune one's intuition is to limit or cancel full-on expectation. We can't expect anything. Like, it's almost whenever you're practicing meditation or you're practicing intuition, it's all about, you're not practicing intuition, you're practicing openness. You're practicing the opening of a space with, whatever wants to come in, comes in. You're not expecting anything, you're not judging what comes through. Right? So the first step to connect with intuition is to practice openness. Another aspect is to remember that intuition is not a trick used by the ego to project a certain persona out there, which I explained. I had people coming and it's like, well, I want to do that. As I want to do that because it's amazing, it's extraordinary, it's, it gives this sense of extraordinariness, like this sense of magic, this sense of, and that would be like, that's the ego looking to find a way out into its dull moment of life, wanted to feel extraordinary with having a magic trick. So again, as long as the ego is going to be in charge, the soul cannot be present. So it really has to be not because it's a trick that makes the ego shine in the face of the world. It is because it is a natural occurrence that is just as natural as breathing or sleeping. Right? Mm-hmm. So like it's more like reconnecting the path of intuition through to the source of like, what is the intention with which I am saying yes to this. So the fine-tuning the intuition is obviously moving the processed knowledge to access to direct knowledge, right? So the discernment that we need to learn is to recognize the speed at which the information is coming. And that is obviously fine-tuned through self-awareness, obviously. But it's the direct information coming from our intuitive self is going to, it's just literally like, zzz. There's no thought stretched out. Like if you were to look back and put in slow motion why you thought of something, you may be actually seeing a connection between, oh, I thought of this because before I saw this, and then before that I heard that on the radio, and then my friend was talking to me about it, and then like, this is a processed knowledge that has come to your awareness due to a thought that just followed a path of wiring up there that already exists. The direct knowledge is, and very often that's a trick, it won't make any sense. It's like you're in the middle of cooking and then just, oh, I'm thinking about Bob. Action, I'm going to text Bob. Hey, Bob, how are you? You just came to mind. Boom.
Like a download. Yes, that idea of just, it's really, everybody says that. At
That's
least.
it. Yeah, it's complete download. That's direct. It's really the speed at which the information comes. We can feel that it's not crippling in from the subconscious or the conscious. It is coming from the unconscious in zoom, speed of light. Right? There's another technique or practice that I would do to fine-tune one's intuition is, because we know that the universe never creates anything half. Therefore, when we have a question, there is an answer connected to it by the nature of it. The fact that we don't know it yet is one thing, but it doesn't mean that there's no answer to it. So it means that the answer to the question we have is lying somewhere, either in the subconscious or in the unconscious. So what we want to do is to use the journaling as a medium to ask the question in the journal, knowing that we're asking this question to the higher self, just like you would ask the question to the game, right? So I would say that the practice would be use the game for a while. And then when you're actually looking like, well, you know, I'm going to take the game away. The game is kind of like the training wheels to intuition, right? Then you take the game away, just like you take the training wheel off. And then you're focusing on, I'm going to ask a question and I'm going to see what comes through. So you're answering your own question, and you can do it because you're letting your hand just lead it itself, or you're using the other hand so that you're triggering the other part of you, right? And it can be just, again, a color that comes through. You write blue, or it's a word, or it is a name, or it is a full sentence, or it is a memory, or it's a song, or it's whatever. But the questioning, the essential questioning of your own self, knowing that if the one aspect of you that asks the question is always the ego, because the ego is the one that doesn't know. The soul is the one with the connection to all that is, therefore to all knowledge, to all knowing. Right? So when you ask the question, you know which part of you does it. It's your lower self. You're allowing to know that the question, that the answer that is coming will be coming from your higher self, because that's a direct, you're just pulling into this density, the answer connected to the question you ask on your journal. And you're going to surprise yourself, I promise you. Okay? And that is very tangible. And then the last one, which not least, but it requires practice as well, is the discernment between the inner voice and the lower self dialogue. So one trick that I could give you is that the inner self dialogue is very often connected with the burdening, the heavy, the non-supporting, the separated, the disconnected, the what if, shoulda, woulda, coulda, yes, but. That is the voice of that's the noise. I would call that the noise. And why? Because it's connected to survival. And this voice connected to survival will therefore carry the experience of, the language that aligns with survival. Can I make it? I'm not enough. There's not enough. I'm not good enough. Only if I had more. Like this is the dialogue, and this is the language that is connecting with the lower frequencies connected to the source of survival. Whereas the soul, connected to thriving, will always feel and share information about your support, your wholeness, your healing if needed, healing is needed, your capacity, your greatness, your like the aspect of you that is capable of pulling you towards thriving. Mm-hmm. And you can practice both as well in your journal, in writing. If writing is a mode that you enjoy doing, it is powerful because it connects the physical body. Writing connects with the physical body and the spiritual experience. So to me, writing has been experienced as a true bridge between the unseen and the seen. But I understand that it's not everyone likes it. And for me, I like writing with pen, but some people like typing. That's fine too, right? Some likes painting. There's a lot of ways to channel one's intuition that is not necessarily connected to a linear way. People write music to connect, and that is the message comes through in the shape of musical linearity, right? So your way may not have been invented yet. Hence the reason why I'm offering you the space to know of no expectation whatsoever, right? You are unique. There's no two similar being. Therefore, the likelihood is your language connected to your soul is slightly different than mine, slightly different than your neighbors or anyone else. And that is, I would say, the greatest challenge and the greatest exploration of all time, because it's not like wanting to learn French, where there's a technique, you go and then you're just learning and practicing it. Or it is really more about in order to fine tune it so much for you to make it so much yours, it's a full immersion in yourself, right? You would go to France to learn the language, and your way of speaking French would be very different than if you had learned it at school, because it would be so much more holistic. In this way, it's the same. It is being able to dive and be immersed so much in your own self that you are imprinted with all of that you are. And that will come up into the way you're connecting with your greater version, your greater format, right? Does it make sense, all of this?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Practice will make the difference, but at least there's a place to start where, how can I empower my empath? Well, we may understand more now why the empath was not empowered through, why can't I do it? And then gives way to practice how to give it more and more power over, on a daily basis, right?
So you're interchanging sort of the empath with intuition.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So they're for you that
they're the same. Yeah,
mm-hmm.
Totally. Because to me, the empath speaks intuition. The intuitive being and the empath are one and the same. Intuition is the language that the empath speaks. The empath speaks intuition, and intuition being a language of light. So the language of the light is what we speak with when we are connected to our higher self, and what it's spoken with all of every other being that is connected to their soul, right? It's the language of light. Intuition is the language of light. The informations are not coming in words, they're coming in light. And light, in light. And this light is transferred by us being the antenna, that we have it's almost like when we are, the radio, like the frequency goes, and then if you want country, you're going to have to turn on 98.1. If you want rock, you're going to have to turn on whatever, 95 point whatever. And we all have a certain number. I am, 101. You are 102.3. You are, and so in order for you to fine tune, you're going to have to spend some time in self-awareness, figuring it out, like discerning, am I here? Am I here? Am I here? Am I here? Ooh, that's the clearest here. And then that is when your inner self and you have been really fully aligned, which is why, to me, the definition of an empath is somebody being capable of aligning with his higher self, right? It's the same idea as the radio alignment. Do you have any question with this related to this empath or intuition, or something to share? I know that there's 2 non-video participants right now, which are Stephanie and Nicole. If you can jump back in or type in the chat if you want to share something as well. Maybe an experience that you yourself had, or any question. It would be right now.
Hey guys, hi.
Oh, hi.
I connected a little bit late. I'm sorry, I had some connection issues, but what I've heard from when I connected till now, it's been very powerful. I mean, I think it's something we are all familiar with it at some level. It's just having it cleared to be able to really practice it. Like you said, it's a language.
Mm-hmm.
And when you said like doing the differentiation between listening to the inner self dialogue, which is like this could have very noisy kind of a voice.
Mm-hmm.
I like to compare it with the AM and FM radio station, right?
Yeah.
No, so you have the FM, which is very loud and it's like on all day long, and the AM usually doesn't get to your radio, but it's there. And
Mm-hmm.
if you tune into it, you can actually listen to it. So you just have to like clean out the noise, and the inner dialogue comes a lot from limitation and lack, and a lot of selfishness, I think. So when you listen to your soul, you know that it comes from a higher frequency of taking responsibility and not blaming anyone else, and listening to yourself. So that's what I got from this, and I like that.
Nice. Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you. Nicole, do you I mean, you are pretty intuitive, so do you have anything to share eventually with somebody? I know that you may have some experiences. Or you, Beate?
Yeah, I think all things that you said, it's like not judging it, not second guessing. That's perhaps my strongest learning, also working with clients, so this is what I feel like, sometimes I wait, for the third time for it to knock, but then then I speak it, so it's yeah, something's coming and I listen for it, I'll go for it. And then there are certain areas where it's harder to I could, for example, say, like in my work, I really trust it. And there's certain things, with my son, I don't trust it. So there are areas that are more clouded, or I guess more of the noise, as Stephanie said, that it's harder to know what's what. And was just thinking about how to use it, really. It's almost like, in the places of in the more noisy communications, to kind of really make consciously, call in the alignment to then be able to differentiate. That feels like a good practice.
Yes, totally. Yeah. And just making a conscious decision and intention to create the space for it is so essential, because again, it's it's like eating better, or doing a physical activity. It does require space. I'm not asking you to dive into, I'm going to spend 3 hours a day and I'm just going to be all in and I'm going to get some stuff. It's actually counterintuitive to do this, because if we put ourselves in having this limitation, we're coming from our ego that it's like, okay, I'm going to do this, you're going to watch me, I'm just going to succeed. Where it's more about again, it is trusting that, what, I feel it now. I'm just going to take a minute and just breathe and see what comes in. And then maybe nothing comes in for the next year and a half. Who cares? It's that things come in, but it's not registering yet. But it's not because it doesn't register that we need to stop. It is because we know that the only way we can register is to keep doing it. And it's not going to wait. It's not going to wait a year and a half, I promise you. But it's almost like having that mindset of full openness and knowing, like, I hear you, I hear you, I hear you, and you're gonna hear. There's no doubt. Okay, Nicole, do you have any experience of intuitive experience that you would like to share, or maybe a takeaway from this webinar?
I would say that the biggest challenge is really having a sense of patience, because even being very self-aware, I register when I'm very in my ego mind and it's running the show. Yet, the answers maybe don't come at the speed of which I want them to come, or I don't feel full clarity about something. So it can propel me into more of my ego thinking. And so it's just really learning to become more comfortable with just being still and not needing to have the answers.
Well, that's
the expectations. Yeah. What you talked about, the expectations is so huge.
Yeah. So yeah, totally. And it's true for a lot of, the expectation is so true for this as much as it's very true for everything. I mean, with what we are experiencing right now. Talk about having to have zero expectation, because we expected all 2 months ago to just go to work and go on vacation and go to there and go to this and boom.
And go to Italy.
And go to Italy.
Yeah, go
Yes.
to Italy.
So, oh yes, actually, all of us were supposed to go to Italy. So, you know, the thing is,
Are we going to go? We don't know yet, but I guess we're not, right?
I mean, June may be a little. We'll see. We'll see. Unless the miracles happen, who knows? You know, but it may need to be moved to different ways. But I connected with Kim, and she asked me for another couple of weeks. So she's not saying no, but she says let's still see. Technically, right now, as it is right now, there's nothing that says that at that date it's not going to be open. But she says again, it's not just because of what we can do, it's what do we feel we wish to do, and what we feel comfortable with. So but to go back to this, is that sense of expectation is that's what we are experiencing globally right now. When we have an expectation, we are limited with what we can see, what we can recognize, what we can invite in. And learning to really be comfortable with the space, a space to explore that there's no like, what am I looking at? Nothing. We're not looking at anything. We're just in the space. And having this awareness coming to us, it's like we're not looking at something, we are invited by the unknown to look at something.
Well, this has been powerful for me, because obviously I have the space, we have the stillness, a stillness that I normally don't have. There's still that distracting voice. I mean, if you're constantly thinking or talking to yourself, so to discern those languages and to really be open in a different way, a level that you're talking about right now, just with a different kind of openness. Because I certainly hear myself talking to myself, a lot, and I'm totally alone, so I do, but that's been good at the same time.
Yeah.
You're my crazy little mama.
Well, and it's interesting, because even in the becoming more familiar with that noise/voice, that of the self, the lower self, it's great, because again, in order for you to become more familiar with and to discern with the higher self, it's by becoming so comfortable with the dialogue that you usually have with yourself when your lower self is in charge. At some point, the practice of really offering a sacred space for this higher self to come in safely, you're gonna sense the difference. Like, oh, that feels a little unfamiliar. It's like there's a stranger in the room. It's not a stranger, but it's a stranger because she doesn't speak like the other one. And so it's going to be like having like, oh, I got these two girlfriends. One is a little, she's tied to the outside here. The other one is more tied to the outside there. So, and they are very different. They need to exist both, and they need to coexist and actually dance together. But first it's really identifying, recognizing what they are, right? Well, thank you so much, everyone, for jumping in. I know it's what else do we have to do on Saturday, right? But
the dark day here, those of us in Austin, at least, huh?
Yes. And if you like, I would love to offer more insights on other subject and topics that you feel like. This one was sparked because I had a few requests, and I felt, let's do it. But if you have topics or focus that you would like to explore in a free webinar like this, just feel free to send me a request, and then we'll jump on it just like this. We take an hour, and then we'll explore it together, and maybe there's a few more guidance that can be delivered. Right?
Good.
Yeah.
Very
amazing. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yes, look at this. Everybody's like, oh yeah. I love you all. And thank you
Okay,
for your
good.
presence. And then
Thank you.
and then I'll see you very soon, most likely all of you. All right.
Okay, bye.
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 For
Cricket.
sure.